Hello. Welcome back to Let's Talk Ray Bradbury. I didn't actually intend on doing reviews 2 days in a row, but maybe this time it is fitting because of the interesting news that broke yesterday where the president apparently intends to place tariffs on all foreign films, which is a very weird turn of events. But this story, as you may have guessed, has to do with filmmaking, so I think it is fitting. So if you're new to the channel, what this is I do reviews of Ray Bradbury short stories, many of them going back 80 years. I'm not sure actually what year this one was written. It's called The Dragon Danced at Midnight. It is the 7th of 25 short stories in his 2002 collection, One More for the Road. It is also the 7th of 25 stories in that collection. The way that this whole thing works is I do a brief synopsis of what happens in the story, and then I sort of wrap it up with just a very light analysis of what I think it all means, what I take away from it. Is it a good story? And spoiler warning, it is a good story. I quite like this one. Although it's probably going to be a pretty short video, the story is actually one of the longer ones in the collection so far, so keep that in mind. All right then, so a couple of tiny B-movie making frauds living in California get a call. A man who operates a local samurai movie theater, he desperately needs a film to show at a premiere in about 90 minutes time because the other film that was supposed to arrive had been held up somewhere in transit. So, not being ones to ever turn away money when it's available, $50, they basically take a movie that they're working on, slap some other crap together in it. It's not finished. They change the name of it to The Dragon Danced at Midnight and hope to pass it off as a samurai film of some sort. They take it to the theater where the drunk projectionist proceeds to put the reels into the machine out of order and sometimes running backwards and all kinds of ridiculous things. There's horrible splice marks and it's completely ridiculous. It's a complete wreck. The theater owner thinks that he's ruined. But there's actually thunderous applause in the theater. All the critics and other people who have gathered to watch the film are in like rapturous bliss from what they've seen. They come out and they're so excited and they call it the most avant-garde film ever made and they love it. So these tiny filmmakers proceed to create 5 hit films in a row in the same way. They take them on the festival circuits and it's loved by everyone. They're making huge amounts of money and soon they find themselves with a huge studio and a huge backlot and they're making all this money. But it's at that time when their projectionist friend, who had been editing all their films together by getting drunk and basically doing it haphazardly, whatever motivation, whatever inspiration moves through him in his drunken state. Well, this man decides that he is going to go on the wagon. He's quit drinking. After that, their fortunes quickly change. They all try getting drunk and try doing the same thing, but they can't recreate the magic of this man's editing. And so before long, they're back in the poorhouse where they began, making crappy little movies to debut, to premiere at one of the 300 or so local theaters in the LA area where they live and work. So, this is a wonderful little story. It's very fast-paced, despite being a little bit longer than the other stories in the collection. I quite like it. It's a wonderful little commentary on artistic creation, also on film criticism, and, of course, alcoholism a little bit, too, as well, I guess, in the industry. Bradbury himself got a taste of that industry. He spent most of his life living in the LA area after having been born in the Midwest. And at a certain point, as his fame grew, he got into screenwriting at times and wrote scripts for some films. And of course, he was sort of in that production pipeline a little bit. So he basically saw this. And while you can't always say that a story is autobiographical, I think there is some sense that for him it is, because he wrote probably a handful or so of stories that were basically mocking the eccentricities of the film industry. So, several things going on here. I'm going to take them one by one. The projectionist being more interesting as a person, as a creator when he is drunk. I think that's an interesting commentary. Artists are sometimes known as being alcoholics. I think it has something to do with sort of the torture that people go through and the types of personalities and then sort of the struggle to create. And reluctantly, I think people can admit that some people do create some of their better work in various states of mental manipulation. I've sat here a great many times and I open up a 6-pack or whatever. I like craft beer, strong craft beer, and I begin writing. And what I create, it is in its best form from that state, but I do find that it frees up my creativity, and at times I basically I'm able to secure the best kernels of ideas of creation in that state. It sort of frees up, turns off a lot of the voices that go on in my head, the self-doubt and all of that, and it does lead to sometimes positive results. Also, another theme here is the oddity that is film criticism. Generally speaking, I think critics are probably right a lot of the time. When it comes to experimental films, I think there's a lot of critics who see things and sort of take away a sense of artistic bliss from them before a lot of the other people do. And so film industry depends on critics to sort of open these doors to get the pull to get these films out into the public, and then they develop into trends, and those trends become a little bit redundant and ridiculous as you have copycats along the way. But in general, I think there is something to be said about the way critics work, and sometimes there is that sense that people. There's a movie, gets a great reviews, it's very experimental, and the general public looks at it and says, what the hell is this crap? So I think there is that. There's a bit of bullshit involved in that whole process, the way that trends develop by the way that certain critics try to sell a film to you in that manner. And it's not always a great film, but sometimes it is, sometimes it's just ahead of its time. I think in this case, it's obviously that Bradbury is saying that, yeah, complete and utter bullcrap is getting heralded as being wonderful by these critics, and it sort of creates a trend, and these people create an entire career of 5 films that are very, very big hits because of that pull from the critics, who people, at least in that time, whatever time he was writing this story, they tend to believe. Less so now. I think people don't take critics' words as much as they used to, because the lines between what a critic is and what is basically just an internet influencer has blurred, so it's not entirely clear who is a real trained critic and who is just a bullshitter trying to get influencer dollars. I think this segues into the unpredictability of successful projects. People work on a lot of different films. Or writing projects. For me, right now it's haiku. On my other channel, I write a lot of haiku, and I can't predict which ones are going to be received the best. Sometimes the ones that I think is a little bit half-assed get 2,000 views, whereas some of the best work, the ones that I love the most, think should be the best, get 5 views, and it's really hard to predict. But the same goes for film as well. There's films that you'd think that should have been hits, and they weren't. And then if they're good, truly good, they do find an audience sometime later down the road and become classics. But in general, you cannot predict a film's success, and that's why there's still flops to this day, with all the bells and whistles of demographics, studies, and all the tinkering that studios do, and all these things they try to do to mitigate the chance of failure and of money loss. They can't predict which films are going to be great and which films are going to succeed, and so there's a bit of that going on in here. These films that this guy produced are unexpectedly big hits, probably shouldn't have been, and because of that, they probably won't age well either. And then finally, I think it's a commentary on the fleeting nature of fame in Hollywood. You can be a superstar one day and you can be nobody the next day. That's very much the case, not just on the people in front of the camera, but also the people behind the camera. Different talents become household names, perhaps, or big, or at least known well within the industry. They get hired by a lot of projects, have a great success, but then it goes away for some reason, and you can't really predict that as well. So hopefully you did save your money, didn't blow it all. But these particular characters in this story, they blew it all, found themselves back in the poorhouse, and they should have gotten out sooner, but they didn't. They didn't save their money, and now they're back where they started. So there's a cyclical nature, and sometimes people get another chance later on. You look at an actor like Keanu Reeves. He's had like 2 or 3 renaissances in his career. Big hits, goes away for 10 years, comes back, big hits, goes away for 10 years, yada, yada, yada. You see that time and time again in Hollywood. And of course, that is part of what Bradbury is discussing here. But as if you couldn't tell by the excited nature of my voice, how fast I'm talking, I quite enjoyed this story. It gave me a lot to think about. I highly recommend it. It's one of the better stories in this collection so far. So I would recommend it. Check it out. One more for the road. Story number 7 is The Dragon Danced at Midnight. Next time we'll be looking at a new story called The 19th, and that will be our 268th review here on Let's Talk Ray Bradbury. Someday we're going to get to the end, roughly 600 short stories. I hope that you would join me for that journey. But until next time, see you later. Oh, and enjoy a good movie, I guess. Bye-bye.